Welcome to Addis News Hour. I'm Solomon Danye. Thanks for joining me. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has today extended Lunar New Year wish to the people and government of China. The Premier said Ethiopia will continue to build on its existing bilateral relations and cooperation with China in the year of the ox. Ethiopia and China have been enjoying cordial relationship in multifaceted areas, including social and economic cooperation. Ethiopian House of People's Representatives says the 10-year perspective development plan should embrace indices that ascertain the equitable benefit of the public. The country's Plan Commission, for its part, underlined that identifying the key performance indicators is very constructive. The plan aims to bring quality-based economic growth, increase production and competitiveness, and build a green and climate-resilient economy. Kasanjani reports.
Members of the House of People's Representative Standing Committee and Planning and Development Commission held discussions today to go through the necessary focal points on monitoring and evaluation for the 10-year National Development Plan. During the discussion, House of People's Representative Speaker Taggasa Jafo said that the 10-year Perspective Development Plan should embrace indices that set and equitable benefit of the public. House Speaker Taggasa said the plan is critical towards reaching the desired prosperity. He added that the system should be in place to make sure they aid the equitable benefit of the public.
As to the implementation of Plan Commission, the monitoring and evaluation activities have been evaluated for years. It should also be conducted in such way, and institutions should develop a culture of modernizing national plans. The plans to respond to the demands of the people will not be successful if they are not guided by law and order. Diligence is also expected from the members of the committee to further encourage and show an insight that the institutions need to update their modern monitoring and evaluation system for the plan to be completed successfully.
And Development Commissioner Fizuma Safa said for her part that necessary work has already been undertaken to ensure the plan be backed up with a modern system.
Identifying the key performance indicators and key performance fields is very constructive, as the plan aims to bring quality-based economic growth, increase production and competitiveness, build a green and climate-resilient economy on the top of bringing institutional transformation, and guarantee private sector-led growth. Then, the plan should be further enhanced by augmenting accountability in the planning process. To monitor and evaluate the implementation of the development plan, the National Monitoring and Evaluation Matrix is to strengthen the implementation of the monitoring and evaluation system by linking and coordinating the Sustainable Development Goals and other international and regional agendas in detail at the development goals and indicators.
The Commission, jointly with the Civil Service Commission, has done necessary work to strengthen the follow-up and support capacities of institutions. The 10-year development plan has been under discussion for the last several months to enrich its overall content and strategies by engaging all pertinent actors.
Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Foreign Affairs Demeqa Mekonnen received at his office today Turkish Ambassador to Ethiopia, Yaprak Op. In the discussion, Demeqa mentioned the strong bilateral relations between the two countries and urged Turkey to continue supporting Ethiopia's role in fighting terrorism in the Horn of Africa. Appreciating Turkey's stance in the law enforcement operation held in Tigray regional state, he said the government has now given priority towards providing humanitarian assistance and rehabilitating the region. He said more than 26 United Nations and international aid agencies are currently engaged in the delivery of humanitarian assistance in the region. They further exchanged views on how to enhance investment and address challenges in the sector, according to spokesperson Office of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Meanwhile, Demeqa Mekonnen had a telephone conversation yesterday with James Swan, the United Nations Secretary General Special Representative for Somalia and head of the United Nations Assistant Mission in Somalia. During their conversation, they exchanged information and views on the current situation in Somalia and the region in general. James Swan briefed Demek on the election process in Somalia, hopes and challenges, current political situation, security threats by the extremist group Al-Shabaab, and related concerns. The two sides appreciated the efforts made by the federal government of Somalia and the federal member states and commended the achievements so far, while stressing the need to continue dialogue and negotiation to resolve the remaining issues of differences. Minister of Peace announced that the government of Ethiopia has granted permit to 75 international organizations that have applied to Tigray region through humanitarian engagement. The permission has been granted to international organizations which have fulfilled the criteria set to screen out eligible actors in the humanitarian efforts, the ministry said. Following the law enforcement process in the Tigray regional state, the Ministry of Peace has been coordinating extensive humanitarian and rehabilitation activities over the past 3 months in collaboration with more than 26 international organizations, including United Nations agencies. Over the past 3 months, 75 members of international organizations who have applied for access to the Tigray regional state have been granted permit to support the humanitarian and rehabilitation process in the region, the ministry indicated. In its capacity as a co-chair of the Emergency Coordinator Center, the United Nations Office of Humanitarian Affairs is coordinating the emergency humanitarian assistance and rehabilitation process in collaboration with the Ethiopian government. United Nations Development Programme UNDP expresses commitment to strengthen its support for the re-establishment of the Tigray region. The representatives of UNDP who arrived in Mekelle to visit the damage in the region held talks with the interim administration of the region. Mulu Naga, chief executive officer of the interim administration, said they've agreed to continue the development program and provide office supplies.
UNDP is part of the investigation team to the damage in Tigray state. They reaffirmed that they will continue their support to reestablish the Tigray region after the investigation finalized. They have provided car, laptop, and some housing materials and other essential equipment today.
Ahuna Izakunua, UNDP's assistant administrator and regional Director for Africa, stated that UNDP is the country's long-standing development partner, and she said her presence will help him to understand the whole situation.
Our visit to Mekelle today is to improve our understanding of the situation on the ground so that we can be better informed in terms of our support to the recovery of this region. But also for the humanitarian situation, the whole UN system works on bringing support to the people here who are in a dire situation, both in terms of humanitarian but also services. So the UN system as a whole is working on this, and UNDP specifically is interested in contributing to the recovery aspects of this support. So we're here to really listen and have a better understanding on how we can help.
State Minister of Finance Yasmin Wahab Rabi thanked UNDP for its support and said a team has been set up for further investigation of the damage in the region.
The reconstruction prioritized to restore services which had been damaged during the conflict, and it needs huge finance. We have come here with the UNDP to overview the situation on the ground. The investigation team is set up from various sectors for further investigation and to assess the damage. After the investigation finalized, it will be transformed to program design. The designed program will consider the expense to reconstruct the region and how it will be financed. We will finalize the investigation in short period of time and will begin reconstruction by mobilizing finance in collaboration with development partners.
ያ ጥናት ከተጠናቀቀ በኋላ እንግዲህ የሚሆነው ወደ ፕሮግራም ዲዛይን ተቀይሮ የትግራይን መልሶ መገንባት
Victoria's histories like Adwa are helpful to solidify national identity and show the insignificance of trivial conflicts that create rifts among the public to Adwa, travellers say. The travellers also said this trip will help them learn more about Ethiopian history. Advisor to the Prime Minister, Daniel Kibret, has also noted the importance of the tour in solidifying the interaction among communities. And David Amrat presents the story as follows.
Adwa tour has been held for 8 years now. The tour is meant to remember the over 1,000 kilometers journey made by the brave Ethiopian patriots who gloriously took victory over the Italian invaders 125 years ago. Unlike the other years, this year's Adwa trip has history learning sessions. One of the travelers says, the history of successful unity of the fathers gives opportunity to learn the values of such unison.
We learn a lot from our fathers' history. Ethiopia, as they built, is a nation of colossal history. For instance, it was leaving their differences aside and uniting against their enemies that they defeat their common enemies. We have learned this.
Another traveler tells a clearer understanding of history will help develop national identity.
An in-depth understanding of history will help protect oneself. For example, instead of accepting the misinformation on the social media for granted, it's better to have a good knowledge of history from original sources. In this regard, here we don't only read only a book on a certain topic, but two or more. We also make discussions on what different authors have written on a single topic. This hence increase your knowledge on the historic facts.
On this issue, advisor to the Prime Minister, Daniel Kibret, has also noted the importance of the tour in solidifying the interaction among Ethiopian communities.
As I saw them, they have come from every corner of the country. There are travelers from the East Ethiopia, West Ethiopia, South Ethiopia, and from Central Ethiopia. These travelers have the chance to exchange information about their vicinities, so each of them don't feel stranger about the culture of another vicinity. In this regard, the problem we face currently is that most of the people don't have more chance to go and work in other regions than their vicinity. So they hear bad stories about others' region. This travel exposure thus helps us bridge this gap.
He also suggested it would be good if Ethiopians from different parts of the country gather in Addis and travel in a vehicle to Adwa. According to Daniel, Adwa victory is a symbol that testifies this generation of Ethiopians has to ethiopians for the development of their country and people without any external quest.
Ethiopians have been maintaining their sovereignty without quest from external body. In case of Adwa, for example, the government never called the public saying they will be rewarded with some money if they would win the battle. The government did not even promise a small incentive, but told them to fight for their country. Even it was the people that brought rations to the battle.
The sacrifice for the victory of Adwa is said to be a turning point for generations of the country, which is to be passed from one to the other. This year's travellers to Adwa said this generation has a lot to take lesson from the sacrifice of forefathers in the fight against Italian invaders and European imperialism at large. Daniel Casal has more.
It is 4 days' time. Travelers are walking to Adwa in commemoration for the sacrifice paid by Ethiopian patriots for the freedom for generations to come. Battle of Adwa fought on March 1st, 1896 among Ethiopia and Fascist Italy in the town of Adwa with the climatic encounter of the First Italy-Abyssinia War. In spite of the fact that Italy, a relative newcomer to the frontier, scrambled for Africa, it looked to build its impact by overcoming Ethiopia and making a land connect between its two domains. Italy and Ethiopia went head-to-head in First Italy-Abyssinia War with the two armed forces at a standoff in Tigray.
We have come from all corners of the country standing in unison. Their common stride for the freedom of the country is a great deal for all generations of the country. It is not only a victory of nations and nationalities of Ethiopia, but a landmark history of Africa.
This year's pilgrimage is a special one, as it is being taken during the time where there is a peace and security concern in the Tigray regional state where Adwa mountains are found.
The welcoming acceptance of the population in all destinations is remarkable. In all the steps, we have enjoyed everything. What makes this trip special is that the determination of the team to move to Tigray at this critical time when fighting is common in the region. The move is a great podium to learn from the historic victory of Adwa.
Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church Patriarch Special Office and Foreign Affairs Head Abuna Aragawi said Egypt and Sudan should learn from Ethiopia not to complain about developments next door. He pointed out that in the Battle of Adwa, Ethiopians have proved their capability of defeating their enemy when they are united. Emmanuel Jorge presents the story.
The fascist Italians were wishing and drafting tricky plans to colonize Ethiopia, while other European countries have already scrambled Africa. When they understood that they could not succeed on those plans, they shifted to occupy Ethiopia forcefully, but they failed to do that and were defeated by Ethiopian patriots. Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church Patriarch's Special Office and Foreign Affairs Head Abuna Aragawi said that the GERD is another victory like Adwa against poverty.
ታሪክ ሁልጊዜ ለዚህ ትውልድ ትምህርት ነው መሆን የሚገባው።
History should be always a lesson for this generation. Our forefathers have done an indigenous exploits. They even did that in a time when they have no technological advancement. So this generation should do much better than that. We can see that they stood together for their nation without difference. The current generation should also have a common sense about his country. For instance, on the issue of GERD, one fruit, an example of the victory of Adwa. Both are battles. The difference is Adwa is against invaders and GERD is against poverty. Both show to what extent we are capable of doing exploits. GERD is manifestation of our unity. We should see it in comparison.
Abuna Aragawi underlined that Egypt and Sudan can take lessons from Ethiopia, who never complained when they used the Abai River for their national interests.
Agreement on the Abai River signed between Egypt and Sudan under the auspices of Britain was a wrong agreement because it excluded and ordered the owner and source of the water not to use its own resource. Now, building the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is not less than the Battle of Adwa. Using someone's wells and banning him to not use his own property is not change and is not just. Egypt and Sudan are using the Abai River in different ways. We have never claimed anything from them because the river originated from us. In the same manner, they should leave us to use our resource since it is our right. Some countries are rich in natural gas oil. Have one country been shared that resource for free? Neither. But Ethiopia has been pouring the fertile soil and water because of the flow of Abai River. So they should rather thank us for using it for free.
ምስጋና ይገባ ነበር። ለኛ ነዳጃችን ነው አባይ በአሁኑ ዘመን።
He added that the whole world never thought that Ethiopians can build the GERD, as they thought Ethiopians could never win Italians and European imperialism at large.
በእርግጥም ዓለም በምን ምክንያት አያደርጉትም ብሎ አስቧል። ልክ እንደ አድዋው ድል ማለት ነው።
The world has never expected that Ethiopia will win the battle because the Italians were well equipped militarily than the Ethiopians. They had the modern weapons by that time in 1895. However, the Ethiopian psychology has won. The Ethiopians' unity has won. The spiritual preparation has become a greater power for Ethiopians. So the role of God and the role of the people were put together. And even now, we should stand together. This generation should not only hear what our ancestors were doing.
The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is under construction with high commitment of the people and government of Ethiopia. Its construction has reached 78% and the second phase of filling the reservoir will be in the coming July.
The Ethiopian diaspora community in the USA and other countries are urged to discharge their national responsibilities of properly promoting the significance of the historic victory of Adwa for black liberation. The Ethio-American Thaddeus Belai says more awareness-raising work needs to be intensified in the African-American communities in the USA, which calls for championing the inclusion in the education system of the landslide victory of Adwa. Shfaralaga reports.
The preeminent symbol of Ethiopia's sovereignty and Pan-Africanism, the victory of Adwa. This decisive victory not only ousted Italian invaders out of Ethiopia, it also galvanized other nations under oppression of colonialism to fight for their freedom across the globe. Thaddeus Belai is an educator, community organizer, researcher and social justice activist. He is also the president of the Ethiopian Public Diplomacy Task Force in the United States. As an Ethio-American, he says the victory of Adwa means a lot to him and his African brothers and sisters.
Personally, the victory of Adwa is everything for me. As a black person in the United States, as an African, as an Ethiopian American, or, as a black person in the United States, it is, a spirit of freedom. It gives me energy to fight, for social justice. We are a beacon of, freedom. Ethiopia is, a beacon of freedom for many African countries. We were able to support and liberate many African, brothers and sisters.
He also says a lot remains to be done to properly promote the victory of Adwa among the black in the USA and other countries.
Adwa is not just a victory of Ethiopians. It is a victory of black people globally. This is a global victory for black people. In fact, this is a victory for human beings. So we need to be able to create an awareness among the diaspora, among the African American community.
Thaddeus is also the founder and president of the board of directors of the U.S. Africa Institute, a U.S.-based academic institution established to help promote the strategic partnerships between the United States and Africa. He says many of the current generation in the United States do not know a lot about Adwa, so he's working for the inclusion of the Adwa victory in the U.S. education system.
When you look at the civil rights, generation, the civil rights, movement generation in the United States, they had a deep understanding about the global black liberation movement. They were able to use the victory of Adwa as a source of, energy to advance, the civil rights, movement, questions. But now, when it comes to, the Black Lives Matter, we are in an era of, Black Lives Matter movement, where you see a lot of, millions of, black, young black, generation, and most of them, I would say, they don't have, any understanding about the victory of Adwa. And the reason for that is the United States, as a country, has been erasing the victory of black people, from the education system. When you look at the history books of the United States, you barely find victories of black movements. So I had, I've had, so many African American friends, and in fact, I was asking one of my friends yesterday, and then she told me that, she didn't know anything about this until she came to Ethiopia. And one of my other friend, he told me that because of his family connection to Ethiopia, he was able to understand the victory of the Battle of Adwa. But the general population, the general black population, especially the young generation, they barely understand and know the Battle of Adwa, the victory of black people at the Battle of Adwa against white supremacists, against colonialists. So, and again, that's something that we need to advocate, and to be able to incorporate this huge victory in the U.S. education system.
He also says the diaspora community need to go extra miles to advance the importance of Adwa across the globe.
One of our projects, to teach, the young generation about not only the Adwa victory, but also, other liberation movements in many parts of, Africa and South and Central American countries, in the Caribbean, because, we have also black people who have been fighting, for their rights and liberation, for many years. And we barely know, those fighters, those liberation movements.
Ethiopia is celebrating the victory of Adwa throughout the month of February with assorted events, although Ethiopians believe that the celebration is not just a one-time event.